Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Young and Wifed Up. This is Marcella.
And I'm Gabby.
And thanks for joining us this week for another episode.
Before we get into today's episode, I want to quickly talk to you guys about our Patreon account. If you guys subscribe on whatever level you decide to support us on Patreon, you can get exclusive content, including video calls, merchandise. We have printables, we have Reco links, we have exclusive merch, and our bonus episodes. So each month we are releasing 2 bonus episodes. I'm doing one and Marcel's doing the other. And if you want to listen to those exclusive episodes, you have to be a subscriber on Patreon. So we hope that you guys consider supporting us in this special way and we can get to know each other more.
Also, if you guys would like to participate in a home reset challenge giveaway we are doing on our Facebook group, it's going to be for the month of May. And the way that you can enter is by participating in each challenge on Facebook. You post a comment with a picture for proof of that you did the challenge and you completed it. So each week is going to be something different. Like our first one that we did was cleaning out your fridge, so on and so forth. So if you want to join that, you can do that by joining our Facebook group and participating with the commenting. And it also is just a good motivator to get your spring cleaning into gear. If you are having a hard time getting started, it's great for accountability. You have other women who are doing it kind of beside you, doing the same tasks. And whoever wins will receive a $25 digital gift card to Amazon. So another incentive.
Yes, that would incentivize me. I always like free money. Speaking of free, another free way that you can support us is by rating us. Yeah. By rating us on Spotify or Apple Podcast. If you guys could please go and give us a 5-star review, that would be fantastic. That's how we get on the charts and how we can push our episodes out to other organic listeners. So we have a topic today that I've become passionate about, and I know Marcella has too in recent years, considering how much we have become over consumers and overstimulated, and we've lost the ability to be bored. So we're going to get straight into it. Marcella, would you start us off?
Yeah. So what is the problem here? Like, why are we feeling like we need to talk about this? I think we can all agree that in our very media focused, oversaturated with just like being entertained all the time, having to always have something on, like, oh, I hate when it's silent, or like I always need something in the background always to listen to or to watch or whatever it is. I mean, it can really affect us. It can also really affect our children. And our ability to focus, our memory, just basic brain health things that it can affect. It's just like a constant need for filling our day with productivity. Also, is another form of not allowing yourself to be bored. That every minute is scheduled for something productive, and you feel like a failure if that's not what's happening. There's no downtime, no rest in your daily or weekly routine. And this has even spiritual implications to it as well. And also, like, when we are bored, we turn immediately to entertainment instead of like enrichment. So there's, various ways that you can fill your time, your free time, along with also when people think of like resting, they think of just like doom scrolling on TikTok or on Instagram or Facebook Reels for hours and hours, because they spent their whole day just going. And so now they feel like we feel like we need to shut off our brain by doing mindless type tasks that are not actually helping our mind or our body or our spirit rest. And that's definitely a huge problem. As far as like what we should be doing to fix it, I think there is like a lot of variation on what your like what's your vice essentially. Like what do you tend to go for? And this could even you can even turn um good things like even audiobooks can become a source of like constantly having to have something on of this like stimulation of needing to always listen to something, or even like informational podcasts all the time. It's like sometimes we need to step away from that stuff. And you guys know, like, we're audiobook girls. Like, we love our podcasts, we love our audiobooks. Like, those things have a place. But there's definitely a way to misuse even those things as well. And this is definitely, I think, can be a temptation for us. So we kind of replace, like, oh, I'm not watching like TV, but you're not necessarily like doing something enriching either.
Yes.
It really depends. So why don't you talk about like what we could possibly do to kind of help us with this overstimulation pandemic situation? I don't know what you would even call it.
Yeah, well, I think also, like, I mean, I can speak for myself, and I don't know if you've had this experience, but I recently, like, in the last few months, after reading Still and Quiet Mind by Esther Smith, realized how much I avoid my anxiety by overstimulating myself. And part of it is like a coping mechanism for anxiety, which I think is like, we can explain that away.
Right.
But the other part is just habit training. We've trained ourselves to believe we need to, one, fill our day with constant productivity, and then two, be constantly entertained by one means or another. And that doesn't mean like you're excited and entertained, but that you're entertaining yourself. You need to be stimulated constantly with things. And so this is what I would put forth as a possible remedy for that, because being on that journey myself and realizing how overwhelmed I was because I was not being bored. Like, I was not allowing myself any mental space at all. Like, from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep, I would have the TV on constantly. Like, there's no other way. And so it's just terrible. It does, like you said, it hurts us mentally and spiritually. And so I started to like feel overwhelmed, like I need to change, And of course, this is something that I'm still battling, and we're going to put forth some practical applications for how we can help our children to avoid this ditch and how we can avoid this ditch ourselves. But the first thing I think that I would put forth is having a mega detox from overstimulation and constant entertainment. And this can look very different for different people. I am not the kind of person that's going to take a break from social media, like an official break where I'm like deleting my social media accounts and I'm going to like burn it all to the ground. Because one, I know that I'm going to go back to it and go back to my unhealthy habits. Like, it's just inevitable. Unless you have extreme willpower, when you go back from like cutting those things out of your life cold turkey, you're going to fall into the same habits. So what I've learned from different books that I've read on this topic, including Digital Minimalism, I highly recommend that book, is that you need to create a healthy relationship with your phone and your TV and, media. So I have forced myself recently to intentionally like be away from my phone and to stop myself from constant entertainment and stimulation. So that includes literally doing things like sitting outside with literally nothing, like not even a book, like literally just your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And so and again, a detox might mean that you do, like, you feel like your phone has a complete hold on you and you can't develop those healthy habits. I'm not saying you shouldn't delete your social medias or whatever, but I'm saying that if you want to be connected on the internet, like, we have to learn and be self-disciplined to approach media and phone consumption in a healthy way, so that we don't go into like this binging and purging of our consumption, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm going to completely starve myself from media consumption. And now when I come back to it, I'm going to binge on it because I've been so deprived. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
and then another thing, like I was saying before, is practicing intentional boredom or inactivity, like deciding for yourself and for your children that you are, for this period of time, not going to be entertained by anything. And that can include books. And we're huge readers. We love to read. Again, Marcel was saying the audiobooks. We love to be involved with enrichment, and we love to learn, and we love to be involved with amazing stories, and those things are so good, and we want that for all of us. But if we are using those things to escape our thought life and
Mm-hmm.
escape boredom because we need to fill our brains and our minds and our time with things, then it's a misuse of that good thing, just like Marcel was saying. So the first step, detoxing from overstimulation and constant entertainment. The second step, practicing intentional boredom and inactivity, which I think
Mm-hmm.
might sound crazy to some people because you're like, how do I practice being bored? But we're going to tell you some practical reasons in a minute. But lastly, I want to say that once you have done these things, I want to challenge you to see how your creativity and your interest for enriching things begins to blossom. Like, you start to desire the better things. You start to
Mm-hmm.
desire, like, instead of going down the scrolling rabbit hole, you start to like reach for enrichment instead. You want to watch, instead of going down the rabbit hole on TikTok, you find this one account that is so educational, and you can go back to that one video that'll help you with this task you're learning. Like, you can start your
More
perspective shifts.
intentional.
You're
Mm-hmm.
using those things as tools instead of a thing to keep you stimulated and honestly dumb. It makes us dumb because we're just
Mm-hmm.
like, there's nothing, like, it's so constant stimulation, you forget the last 5 videos you watched, like, immediately. It's just
Mm-hmm.
insane. Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember half the things I saw today on my phone, and that is
Especially with
scary.
like the short form stuff, like,
Exactly.
yeah.
So I think that there is so much merit in boredom, because then you're allowing your brain to stimulate itself. It's
Mhm.
crazy. Like, your brain is not being stimulated, so it starts to work differently for you. You start to become more creative. You start to wrestle with your anxiety, and you start to wrestle with spiritual issues. You start to think about conversations with people. You start to make plans, like, for your life. You start to, like, have new ideas for your day and the things that you want to create and things that you want to learn. And it just, like, changes your brain when you're bored, because
Mhm.
your brain has no other option than to
Yeah.
work, right?
Mhm.
It's not being like pushed down and restrained anymore. It can finally breathe, and it can actually do what God made it to do. And I'm
Mhm.
not saying it's easy, because when I first started practicing intentional boredom and like detoxing myself and having set times of the day for phone consumption and stuff, it literally feels like you're coming off of a drug. Like, it hurts physically to sit with your thoughts. It feels not normal because we're
Mhm.
so used to
It's
one way.
unpleasant. Yeah.
And it genuinely, like, would make me feel like shaky and antsy at first, but now I like, oh, I could breathe. The creativity is working in my brain. I'm wrestling and chewing with things in my brain that I wasn't able to before. And it just like you have to get over that hump of and that could happen with children too. If they are constantly being entertained and then you take that away from them, then there's going to be a detox process for them too. So I'd love, Marcella, if you could talk about some practical ideas for kids to help them to create these boredom situations so that they don't fall into the place where we have fallen into.
Yeah. So in the notes that I have in our original notes, we didn't put anything about screen time, but I just want to like touch extremely briefly on this. I know this is like a very touchy subject with a lot of parents. What for our home personally, we are not a absolutely zero screen time. Like the boys will watch like things that I pick for them to watch. Like Seth will sometimes request certain things, and I tell him no, that he cannot watch that because I know it's going to be either overstimulating or it's just not something that's going to be, it's just not good for them to watch it. It's, not age appropriate or whatever it is. It's like, this is not. So shows are better than others. Some things are better for kids to watch if you are using screen time. There are things that are better to do when you are using that for whatever reason it is. Utilizing your screen time, watching certain things is going to be better than watching other things. And you can kind of like do your own research on what you think is comfortable with your kids or whatever. However, I will say, I don't think we will ever get to a point where our kids will have things like tablets or iPads or even phones for a very long time. Because if we as adults with a stronger willpower and stronger discipline and self-control have a hard time with this, we cannot even imagine how hard it is for our children to keep themselves and their brains from getting addicted to this stuff, because it's real. Like you were saying, it's a drug. And when you have a child who is addicted to screen time and it's that constant like dopamine hit all day, when you take that away, it is literally like going through withdrawal. And there's just like I said, it's a kind of I've found it to be a controversial subject amongst a lot of parents of, what is safe and healthy and normal and what's not. So the screen time thing is kind of a separate conversation. I think it does kind of tie into this a bit if your kids are using screen time. I think it's wise to heavily monitor how much, how often during your days and weeks. And is it being outweighed with other things like boredom?
Mm-hmm.
So instead of it being like, well, we just have no screen time at all, that doesn't mean that your kids it's automatically being replaced with something that's edifying for them or helpful. Mm-hmm. So a couple of like practical ideas: going outside with no plan. Go to a park. Don't have any like fun activities to do, bringing stuff, just like let them run and play and do whatever they want. And it's crazy because kids are so much better at doing this than we are. Like they are so good at like entertaining themselves and finding things to do. But you have to give them a space where they have to learn how to essentially entertain themselves instead of you having to do all the planning and essentially interfering or maybe even trying to make it like a forced learning experience, like practicing masterly inactivity. I think is so vital. And also it's just like kids, they have their imagination. They need to keep that for as long as possible. They can't be doing that when there's constantly something to be stimulated by. And sometimes that does mean you just let them roam for a while, or if, they're whining because they're bored, not trying to find the next thing for them to do. It's like, okay, well, go figure it out. Like, kids are creative, they're imaginative. Like, once they figure out that they have no choice but to figure it out themselves, like, they'll do something. Like, they're smart.
Yeah.
And so I don't feel like you constantly have to like have fun activities planned all the time. It's good for the kids to be bored because it helps literally does help their brain. Another thing is purging your toys as much as possible. I've found that the kids do better with playing with their toys when there's less of them. So sometimes you may, you find that with your children, it's like they have so many toys, and they don't play with any of them. They're just like kind of like whining at me the whole day because they're bored. And it's like, it might honestly be because they're overwhelmed with the amount that is there.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is research that shows that the less toys that you put in front of a child, the more time they are going to spend on each of them. So more is not always better. So purge the toys, especially if you have a lot of like light up button ones where it takes absolutely no brain power to get a reaction or a response out of a toy. All they have to do is push a button and it's like lights in a song and all of this cool stuff. Now we have a few of these here because the kids like to dance music or whatever. We have a few of those. A majority of the toys that we have in our house are like non-electronic toys. And that's like another thing is like they don't have to do a lot of work to be entertained. They just have to like turn this thing on and push a button and it lights up entertaining. It's almost like their form of, us turning on the TV and having it on in the background all the time because there's this like constant noise going on. And also, if you have children, you find yourself you are constantly having stuff on the speakers. You're constantly having stuff on the TV and all these things. You are not the only one that's consuming that. Your kids are in the house too, and they're consuming that also. So you also have to be careful how you are displaying what your habits are with your devices because they're watching you and they're taking notes of, okay, well, mom and dad are doing this. So it must be fine, that when I grow up, it's like, this is what I saw my parents doing with their devices. We don't know like what the impact, even when they're small and when they're very young, like what they are paying attention to and absorbing during these very formative years. So keeping all of that in mind with your kids, let's talk about us as adults now.
Yeah, because I mean, sometimes it feels like, well, we've already gone to this place, so just like screw it all. It's too late for us, But then, like, we are in a huge pandemic of mental health decline, even in Christian communities where we have hope. We have hope. We have the hope of Christ. We have salvation. We have so much goodness and blessing, and we are battling mental health issues, anxiety and depression, and that's sometimes not even circumstantial. Like your life could be going so well and you're still battling these things because this is a part of the fall, but we are also driving ourselves to this point because we are not thinking. We have stopped allowing our brains to work normally, and we're so scared of being alone with our thoughts that we just like overstimulate. But when I was thinking about this, I was recently reading one of the chapters of Mother Culture by Karen Andriola. Fantastic book. I'm halfway through right now. I love it so much. One of the chapters I just recently finished was about developing close friendships among siblings. And one of the things that she recommended for children is for them to be bored together And it was just so
Mhm.
crazy, like her bringing up different scenarios and stories of siblings that learned how to be creative together. And I was like brought back to this very specific day. And I don't know if Marcella, you remember this day, but we were driving. It was a road trip. I think we were driving to Arizona, and you and I were in a back seat, and we didn't have phones. We were still like maybe a younger middle school. And my parents were listening to this same CD that they always did. And we grew up Pentecostal, and this guy's name is Tommy Walker. And I remember you and I were so bored. We were so bored on this drive that we made up hand signs to every song on that album. Okay. And we were just like cracking ourselves up and just having the best time together. And it was a like 5-hour drive, like something excruciating. I don't remember where we were going, but I like when I read that chapter, I was just like, I had like a That's So Raven moment where like, what? I was like, I just was like, I had recovered this memory that was buried inside of my brain of you and I being.
I don't remember that.
That is so funny, Marcella. Okay, we were super young, but I remember us just having the best time of our lives, sitting in the back of the car, bored out of our stinking brains, and my dad playing the same CD he always played, and you and I just like made up hand signs to every song, and like we were like dancing, and we were just like having the best time, and it made the drive go by so fast. And I just think like those small moments, like how they contributed to our friendship as adults. And I just think like the point that she was making in the book was so true, that like boredom is like such a beautiful thing for cultivating relationships with children, like with siblings, with each other, and also like adults. Like we don't always have to be doing something to bond, you know. So anyway, I just had to share that story because it was like a recovered memory for me the other day, and I was just like, how beautiful. Like I hope that our children have the same experience with each other, where they're bored together and they're so desperate for entertainment that they have to make their own entertainment. You know,
they have to be the entertainment.
Yes. Yeah, you and I were entertaining each other, you know, with that silly album that we were just making fun of and just having a good time. But anyway, stuff for us as adults. And these are things that I've been purposely, intentionally doing myself as I work through my own mental health issues and trying to learn how to be bored and learn how to be alone with my thoughts. So the first thing is kind of the same thing with kids, going outside with no plan. Sometimes when we decide we're going to go outside, we're like, "Oh, we're going to go on a walk, or we're going to go ride our bike, or we're going to do this activity thing." But like sometimes like just sitting outside and enjoying God's nature is just like beautiful. Like it's like it gives an opportunity for boredom in a super specific way, where you go, you're not doing an activity, and you just like see what happens when you're out there. Like I've been walking outside with no plan recently, and then like I started noticing like little flowers in my backyard I hadn't noticed before. And you just start seeing things differently. Like the sky is blue and you're like, "Wow." You know, the veil is being uncovered from your eyes, you know. And then another good thing to practice, intentionally being alone with your thoughts, which is terrifying. I know I have anxiety just like you guys. It's hard. Like it's hard because then you start thinking about anything and everything and you start spiraling. But read please read Still and Quiet Mind by Esther Smith. She gives some wonderful tips for battling your thought life with anxiety. And honestly, it is hard. It's still hard for me. I don't like it. It's uncomfortable for me, but I know that this is going to be better for me. This is the better thing for me, to be willing to consider and think about things that otherwise I'm trying to shut my brain off and not face them. Another good practical thing to do is to have empty gaps in your day, which I think as for those of you that are stay-at-home moms or wives, or you're a young unmarried woman and you have a little more flexibility in your day, this is like a really good thing to practice, to intentionally like have blocks of time in your day where there's no plan. You're not cleaning, you're not cooking, it's just you and the kids hanging out, or it's just you by yourself hanging out, and you're just bored. and seeing what happens. You just never know what can come out of boredom. Another practical thing with our phones is leaving our phones in places that are not right next to us. Like, I always used to say, like, my phone is an extension of my body because I never had it away from me. And now, the past like year or so, since I read Digital Minimalism, that was a really eye-opening book. I've been leaving my phone like away from my body, like constantly, and I only check it like once in a while. And I decide, and I don't even open all of my notifications at the same time when I open my phone. If I open my phone, I like decide what I'm going to do when I'm open my phone. I don't get lost in my phone and get like sucked in. Choosing a time of day to participate online or with entertainment, don't feel like if you feel like you must and like detox completely and not entertain yourself at all, that's one thing. But I myself personally like to participate online. I love Facebook groups. I like watching videos on TikTok. I like participating on Instagram. And so those sort of things, because I enjoy doing them, I choose when in my day or during my week when I'm going to go on those specific accounts, or when I'm going to post, or I have literally specific days that I check certain accounts and I stick to it, and it's a habit, and I can still enjoy and participate online, but I'm not being consumed by it and having to constantly check it.
Yeah.
And then lastly, Marcella had a really good tip, is to swap out your phone for an actual alarm clock in your bedroom. And even another thing to consider is like, what do you rely on your phone for? And can you outsource it for other things? Like, instead of using my timer on my phone, I just use my Echo device. And so it's just another reason to not have to pick up my phone. I can still have something is electronically helping me, but I'm not looking at it, and I don't have to worry about it or touch it, and I'm not engaging with it like directly. And so yeah, like having a specific clock in your room, like old school clock in your room. I like to have a clock in every room just so that I can like move my head and see it and not have to like open my entire phone and get sucked in again. But yeah, thinking about ways like having a actual calendar, like a physical calendar that you can write on instead of having to look at your phone. The things that we use our phone for convenience, can we consider using the real tangible version of it so that we're not constantly getting sucked in? And I think these things can really help us to detox from this overstimulation and help us to use our brains for what God made them to do, which is creativity, to think about the things of God, to glorify God, to think about things that are enriching and helpful for us and for our family. And it's not easy. And I'm so far from mastering this. Like this, I feel like I'm still a baby with this stuff, and I'm still trying to figure out what works for me, what doesn't work for me. But overall is the desire, like, do we have a desire for the better thing, to not be consumed by the things of this world, but to be consumed by God and the things that he created and the things that are good, and we should strive for that better thing. Do you have any other thoughts about how we can personally unstimulate ourselves?
I think one thing that kind of takes the convenience out of that I've heard from other people, I have not tried this myself, but I've been tempted to. takes the convenience out of social media, especially I feel like in our current generation, that's probably where we struggle the most is with the social media aspect of our devices. Is taking those apps off of your phone, but you have set times in the day where you can go on your computer and access that stuff through your computer instead. Obviously, it's not nearly as convenient as you have this little device that you can have in your back pocket that you can check essentially at any moment, as opposed to having either a huge desktop or like a huge laptop that you have to take everywhere so that you could check this and check that and all this stuff. Our phones are designed to be made for convenience, to use very quickly, to open quickly. And computers are just not actual computers are not actually designed quite the same way. Some of them are kind of similarly, like I have a tablet that's kind of formatted the same way as like a smartphone, but I can't stick my tablet in the back of my pocket. And I'm not going to lug this big old device around the house with me.
Right.
So some people they only have those apps on their computer. They keep it in a kind of central location. They don't usually have it like in their bedroom because they find they just kind of sit in bed for hours and hours and just are on there for forever. As opposed to you make it more of an official thing, like you said, in my schedule on this day, I'm going to check this, this, and this for these reasons, as opposed to the doom scrolling situation that I think a lot of us may find ourselves in. So that was one other thing that I was thinking about when you were talking about what we do as adults. That was about it, though.
No, I love it. I think this is something that we can all consider and we can strive to do better in our lives. And even considering how our generation was kind of the experiment generation.
Yes.
Our poor parents had no idea what they were getting ourselves
into.
Yeah, they grew up with dial-up and it's just a completely different animal that we're dealing with. And we have to, instead of saying that it's all bad, we can't use it as tools, we need to master it instead of it becoming our master, so that we can do the better things, we can choose the better things, and so that we can use our brains to its full capacity. Because right now I feel like we are becoming dumber and we're not critical thinking, and we're so depressed and so anxious because we're never alone with our thoughts. We're never bored. We're never challenging ourselves intellectually in that way. So anyway, that is basically the gist. Let us know what you guys think in the comments and on our Patreon and on our Facebook, what you guys think of this topic. Have you guys been considering being bored, and what do you do to help you stay away from overconsumption and overstimulation so that you can use your brain more effectively and so that we can protect our children from those same things?
Yeah. Wait, I actually have one more thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll make this super quick. This is already really long. I feel like all of our minisodes are becoming
megasodes.
Not. Another thing that I've heard is if you like your evenings to kind of be spent with something, you had a super busy day and you're I just kind of want to relax and watch something or whatever. Even somebody posted something, I just saw it recently, and it was how did we go from we're able to sit down and pay attention to a movie, a 2-hour movie, and then we went to TV shows, which are some of them are 45 minutes to an hour long. And then we went to YouTube videos, which can be 10 minutes or whatever. And then we went to now TikTok videos, which are sometimes are 15-second videos, and then we're nope, it's too long. They're not getting to the point fast enough. So even just swapping, like I said, those short form video things for even being able to have an attention span for a longer movie is probably going to be a better option than having these super short videos and you're just constantly going to the next thing because your brain is just bored within 10 seconds.
That's so funny because
even things like that.
I told Ryan recently we need to challenge ourselves and watch a movie with Isn't that sad?
And also, how often have you been able to sit and watch a movie in your home and at no point get on your phone to have a second device going?
It's literally so hard.
Or watching a TV show and not doing that. So it's like, think about even those things. Like, even if you're just like, I just genuinely just want to sit and just like veg for an evening.
Yeah.
Choose a movie. Like, yes. If you can avoid doing like, again, the doom scrolling situation, getting sucked into all this short form stuff that you can just like, your brain can tap out from in literally 3 seconds or even less than that.
Yes.
Even that is a better option.
I agree, dude. It's sad, but this is our reality now.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Please let us know what you think, and we will talk to you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.